All right. Joining me tonight, Mr. Billy King. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. Um, man, how are you doing? Other than tonight, and I'll be more specific. We're at the cusp of 10 months here on extended sabbatical, and I know
Right.
you're a hard-working, passionate musician. I've kind of asked people, how did the lockdown affect you when it started? Now it's been so long, it's become more of a kind of a condensed thing, but you can explain it any way you want. But how did the lockdown start for you? How were you able to kind of maintain your juice, your flow, your musicianship, and your sanity through the summer and fall? And what have you been doing kind of in the last couple months?
Yeah. Well, so it started off, it was kind of weird for me, I guess, because in January, you started hearing about it and like a lot, where it was just all in the news that half the people were saying you got to get prepared for this, and half the people are saying it's not a big deal, it's a joke. And
It's still that way.
right. Oh, I know, which is so funny. But
Yeah.
whenever it in January, like I was already like, okay, I'm gonna start saving my money. And I started going to the grocery store and getting like canned goods and paper towels and
Nice.
like toilet paper and stuff. And then it turns out that like all of a sudden everyone is trying to get canned goods and toilet paper and paper towels, and then you can't find anything. And so it was kind of cool for me, I think, where I was like, haha, I predicted correctly and wasn't just like a crazy guy thinking that this was like going to be, something that
Hmm.
you think about right now and then 2 weeks from now is not a big deal. But yeah, so I did get furloughed from my job too. And then that was a little bit nervous for me at the beginning because I was like, well, I don't even know, if I am out of a job for 2 months, I don't have enough savings to like pay my bills. So I was
Hmm.
just like, I'll have to move back home at 30 years old. I'm
Hmm.
like, I can't do that. But then the unemployment thing came through. I applied for a whole bunch of grants, and then it kind of switched for me, so it became kind of relieving. It was like, you know I've had a job for over a decade supporting like me so that I could focus on music, and now like all of a sudden I'm getting paid to stay at home and focus on
Hmm.
music. So I was just like, this is incredible. So I was able to write a whole bunch, um, and just work on new music, get new ideas going, and then get this album out. So it turned out to be kind of a blessing in disguise, and kind of turned my life around and was able to help me focus more on music, and then kind of transition into being a full-time musician to where, that's what I've been trying to do from the beginning of playing music, basically.
Hmm. That's good. I mean, I think this time, people in our position, you're kind of, unless, it's affected you, the actual disease, and has affected you in really intense, like specific ways where it's really hindered you. I think most of us, I would hope most of us have taken advantage, just like you said, of the time, because this time like this does not pop up very often in life, and as an artist you want to take advantage of it. So it's awesome that you were
Right.
able to jump into it, because I think a lot of us have been able to do that. So I would kind of concur with your general, take living in the moment, taking advantage. Now, has that sustained you all the way? Because I'll say for myself, the first 4 to 6 months for sure, and then for me in
Oh
the
yeah.
fall, I hit a little bit of a like, oh god, I'm starting to get really fucking bored. I
Oh,
think
totally.
October. So you kind of taking from what you said, how have you been doing, say, the last 4 or 5 months? Have you been able to kind of sustain that energy, or now are you getting into a territory it's like, all right, now we still don't know how long this is going to be or what?
Right. I mean, and that's the tough part too, is your endurance, basically. Like,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
this is a marathon and not really a
Yeah.
sprint, it seems to be turning out. And it's like, my goodness. especially for extroverts like myself, it does get tough because I mean, I'm home, you know, most of the time. Like I leave my house maybe once or twice a week. And then, we were able to book some shows. So we've been doing like one show a month or so. And then, I go to band practice like once a week, and that's about it. That's my extent of like sanity. And half the band practices are really just hanging out. We're like, all right, we're together, like, and then we end up just drinking and having a good time. And maybe we don't practice that night, but it's more like a band hang.
For sure. And yeah, that's interesting. It is different for extroverts and introverts. It was to go back first to what you said about being on the ball early. My wife was like that. So she was kind of stocking up, and I was definitely a little skeptical of how necessary it was. But shortly thereafter, I was like, well, this ain't the worst thing in the world to be stocked up. But it's funny that you were on board with that. But yeah, so like my wife is pretty much an introvert. I'm like pretty split down the middle where I really can be quite extroverted and quite introverted. Like I like to be
Yeah.
around people, but then I really do like to be alone. And our
Yeah.
daughter is pretty much an extrovert. I mean, she's pretty much a full blown extrovert. So, but I feel for you because it for extroverts it's extra tough, no doubt about it. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, definitely I do in my alone time as well.
for
Uh,
sure.
so I feel you on that. But I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious to see how long it's going to keep going. The vaccine is coming out, but uh, how long is it going to be before we can really tour again? I mean, because last year was kind of our big year. I thought, it was like going to be our breakout year. We had this new album we're releasing. We had a whole tour planned, had to cancel that. We had just gotten an RV, and we spent a lot of money buying an RV, spent a lot of money on an album, and now it's like, now here we are just sitting ducks, like can't do anything with all this stuff that we had
Yeah,
intended
that
to do. So,
sucks.
and like having to transition to be more uh online internet based music, like having to kind of redirect and focus all your attention to TikTok and Instagram and all of these ways to get new listeners.
I know, man. It's tricky. I don't even know if we need to get all the social media business, but it really is. It can be quite counterproductive in terms of life. But it's interesting because you said what you just described is means you guys took some big hits by everyone's been affected differently, but you guys, if that's what you had planned and the investments you made, that's a pretty big negative. But the first thing you went to when I asked you about it was positive. The
Yeah.
positives you've been taking on it. So that's great. I mean, that you were able to really find, in spite of all that shitty crap you had to endure, and you continue to endure because you can't take advantage of those investments. But the first thing you said was how great it's been, so that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of have to take the bad with the good. And I mean, I feel like overall it's been better than not. I mean, granted, uh, I'm sure that a lot of people did lose loved ones and things like that to this virus. So that's not fun. I did lose my grandmother at the very beginning of all this, and no one knows if it was COVID or not. She had lung cancer, and then she went to the hospital for pneumonia, and then like had the flu. And that was before all the testing. It was like right at the beginning, like March, the first day of lockdown. I was furloughed. My grandmother passed away like in the same day. And then uh, the week before she had gone to the hospital, I couldn't even go visit her because of all the restrictions that they had already placed on the hospitals. So it was kind of a bummer. I just like knew that it was ending, but nobody could go see her.
I'm sorry to hear that, man. That's a bummer. Was
It
she in
is.
Texas?
No, in Arkansas.
Oh, so
So
that would be. I mean, that's kind of well in there in terms of the virus getting in there, but no one really knows, right? No, who knows? There's no way
right.
to trace it at that time. Well, that's a bummer, dude. I'm sorry to hear that too. So probably the most interesting part of this whole podcast is learning about people's kind of roots and where they come from, not only as a person, but as a musician. So, can you kind of tell
Yeah.
me where you came from, where you grew up, but then also kind
Yeah.
of how your musical life came about when you started playing guitar, when what you were listening to through the years and all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. So, you know, for me, I started playing piano first. That was the first instrument. My grandfather taught me. Um, you know, I started playing just as soon as I could start walking, basically. My grandfather was like a jazz drummer. So he was a professional drummer, walked on to West Point for
Cool.
the drum line, did
Damn.
touring with a lot of big swing jazz bands in the 40s. And, he kind of was the one that inspired me to be a musician, basically. And he was always the one too that told me that music, he just, I don't know, kind of told me what his dad always told him. And it was like, there's always going to be someone better than you, son. And so that was kind of his excuse to like start a family and get a job and all this. But,
Mm.
you know, for me, I just was like, kind of, I didn't care. I was like going to keep pursuing music because that's what I love and is what my passion is. But yeah, so I grew up in South Texas in a small town called Harlingen. It's in the Rio Grande Valley, right next to San Benito. So I was like split in between San Benito and Harlingen. And Freddie Fender of the Texas Tornadoes is from San Benito. They have a
Nice.
water tower dedicated to him. And then
Solid.
this country artist, Charlie Crockett, who's been like kind of coming up in the scene, he's actually from
Oh
San
yeah.
Benito too. So, which I thought was interesting. I never have met him, but I'd love to meet him and kind of talk about where we grew up. I guess he's older, so like I never knew him in high school or anything like that.
Yeah, he's
But
great. Charlie Crockett's
he
great.
is.
Fantastic
He
voice.
is.
Yeah.
And so, for me growing up though, it was piano, and then in 6th grade, I jump into percussion because I wanted to play drums. And then in 7th grade, my jazz band said that they needed a guitarist, and I said I have a guitar, so I just started learning guitar then. So 7th grade, guitar became my weapon of choice, basically. And then then I'm in jazz band, I'm learning guitar, and then all of a sudden I'm writing songs. And that's kind of whenever I realized like this is what I'm going to be for my life. I don't care if I make no money at it. Like I want to just make music.
Seventh grade.
And
That's how young?
yeah, yeah.
Nice. That's young, dude. That's young.
And so, then you're writing all these songs, and my philosophy was always you kind of have to suck to get better. So like you just have to work
Oh yeah.
through being awful to get to where you need to be. And so like that's kind of what helped me to push myself, because I mean I knew
Oh
that my
yeah.
songs whenever I first started really were pretty bad. And my parents, they were not my dad. So my mom and my stepdad at the time, they were like, "You're great at music, but like, don't count on it." And then my dad was kind of like, "Do whatever you want to do." And anyway, then finally, now my parents see like, "Oh, that's what you are. You are a musician," and like,
Hmm.
I'm at least able to support myself. So they can't really say anything.
No, dude, I definitely know the you gotta suck to be good route because I sucked for a while.
Yeah.
You're much younger starter than me. So I started playing guitar when I was 15 and I didn't really decide that's what I wanted to go full tilt until I was about 19 or 20. And I had a long way to go and I had a lot of work to do, but I did it. I fucking did it. It took years, but yeah, I know that route. That was my route for sure. So,
Yeah.
but you starting that young, it doesn't really surprise me because when I was listening to your album, it's got I hear most of the rock and roll tree in there. I hear a lot of early influences all the way up through the punk stuff, and
Yeah.
but there's a sophistication to it. There's no doubt. There's a sophistication to it. So the fact that you know started that young and have that much and the fact that you have that family connection there where your Gramps was a drummer, that makes a lot of sense listening to the music. So
Oh yeah.
and then who are you listening to? Like, I'm sure it's been a ton of different shit, but like, who were the first
Yeah.
people, and then next level of people who were like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah. Oh, totally. So what's funny for me is like, you know, whenever I was in elementary, I have, a brother, a sister, two stepbrothers, two stepsisters, half brother, half sister. So a big family, and all the girls were really into the boy bands. So like whenever I was in elementary school, I was all into Backstreet Boys, Spice Girls and all of that. It's funny.
Nice.
And then, but really though, for me, even in elementary, like the first CD that I remember holding was Tom Petty's Greatest Hits. Um, so really Tom Petty, then it was David Bowie was a huge influence for me. Then it was, Freddie Mercury with Queen, and like, it kind of became like an Elton John too. So like all these guys that are like very theatrical and like
Mhm.
creative with their writing were kind of became my heroes. And even though I don't think we sound anything like them, and then high school comes along, and then I'm really getting into punk. And you know uh, I don't know, in middle school Blink 182 was huge. Everybody listened to Blink 182 and Eminem. So I mean, I would even say that Eminem was a big influence. I can't tell you how many times I listened to his songs. um,
It's so funny that you say that those influences that are theatrical, and that they are theatrical, no question about it. But I was listening to your album. I swear to you, I probably wouldn't have remembered, but I was going to ask you if you had a history in the theater, if you had
yeah,
done acting growing up and stuff.
so I haven't personally. I've been in a couple movies, and you know that's pretty cool and all. Uh, but
What
I was
movies
in
were you
this
in?
Richard, um, the Get Down. No, I forget what it's called. It was the Richard Linklater Dazed and Confused sequel, um, and
Oh,
it was going to be
yeah, I
called
never saw
something
it.
like the Get Down, and then they changed it to something else, or it was going to be called one
Hmm.
thing, and then it changed it. I had small parts. I was like a background guy, but I was like, hey, I'm in a
Nice.
Richard Linklater film. And then this movie that's coming out, Remember to Forget, should be out this year in 2021, and like a lot of small little shorts. But that is all kind of thanks to my brother, my little brother, and my sister, Sarah and John. They were both in, speech, drama, debate. So they did theater in high school. That was like their main thing. I played tennis, so I was like a little bit different, which don't get me wrong, I still play tennis to this day, love it, but kind of wish I would have gotten more into the theater like they had, because it gave them a lot of experience. My brother got a full ride to college, Western Kentucky University, which was like, surprisingly, it was one of the top uh, speech drama debate schools in the nation. So he ended up going to become a world champion in certain
Mm,
different categories of his college career. So it was pretty cool.
very cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, the theatrics come through, bro, in the music for sure. You have a lot of fun. You have a lot of fun with
Yeah.
the lyrics and the vocal approach, and I do the same. I love I do get silly at times, and I'm not afraid to get weird. My roots are strong in the blues and rock and roll, but ultimately, to me, the most fun approach is to have an approach akin to yours. It's very like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna sing this song, but I'm gonna add this tweak to it. That the
Yeah.
tweak is the thing that hasn't been done yet. A lot of people have played a 3 chord rock and roll song, and a lot of people have used this.
Right.
A lot of people have wrote about this topic before, but they haven't done it with this little tweak on it. And
Yeah.
you do that in throughout all your songs, like the little British accent you added in one of the songs, and yeah, man, I
Yeah,
do
for sure.
voices and stuff too. I love that stuff.
Cool.
It's fun, dude.
I do too. And I try and get on that more. It just gets
Hmm.
being unafraid to just get weird with it,
Yeah.
and not really worry about what other people are going to think. Because and whenever it all comes back to it, I'm writing this for myself. Like, yes, I want people to love it and listen to it, but I'm writing it because I like this. And if you like it, awesome, let's be on this journey together. But I'm not going to be offended if somebody doesn't care for it.
Totally, man. 100%. I love that approach. That's yeah. And I think I'm a few years older than you, but I remember in middle school I got heavy into like Wu-Tang and
Oh,
Tupac and
cool.
Biggie. So I don't know if Tupac probably has there's probably a small influence in there, just in like, sometimes you gotta have the attitude. Wu-Tang, I think there's some influence in there for sure. It's just that every Wu-Tang song is just that doom, doom, sh, doom, doom, sh. And
Yep.
I like to get to these kind of tribal beats, these kind of things too. And I think some of that comes from Wu-Tang. Ginger Baker and
Yeah.
Wu-Tang, I think.
Yeah, totally.
But
Love it.
so I feel that Eminem thing. He was just a little
Yeah.
before I was in that stage, but I probably would have hopped on that for sure. Or he was a little bit
Yeah.
after. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think I was in like sixth grade when the real Slim Shady got huge. And I just remember this time riding in the car with my mom and my brother and sister and my mom's friend Laurie and her kid. So her kid was Taylor Simmons and Lila Simmons, and like we were, me, my brothers John and sister Sarah, we're all just like family best friends. And anyway, I just remember cruising down the street singing that song, like my mom getting all into it too, which I don't know. Looking back on it, it's probably not a good song for a sixth grader to listen to, but whatever.
Oh yeah. No, no. I remember. Yeah. I think I was in high school, like a freshman or something, when that first Eminem, and I remember listening to those skits he did, which were for a high
Yeah,
schooler were like super funny. It's like almost Adam Sandler humor. Those skits.
yeah,
Um, which I remember liking at that age too. So when did you make the move to Austin? Was there anywhere in between hometown
yeah,
and Austin?
yeah. So graduated from high school, Harlingen High School South in 2007, and I went to school at A&M. And I went to A&M because I got the biggest scholarship out of all the other schools I was offered. And
Was that
I
for
once,
tennis?
no, academics. And
Oh, cool.
so I was like number 7 in my high school, which, you think at the time you're like, cool, I'm smart, but I had never had to study or anything. Turns out my school, just didn't really prep you for college, because I get to college and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to study. And it was incredibly hard. I got all C's my first semester,
Mm,
just across the board. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
this is tough, man. So I had to switch it all up and actually start focusing on, getting better grades so that I didn't have a terrible GPA. But
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I did
so
not do good
College Station,
first semester freshman year.
yeah.
There were other
So
priorities that year. That
right,
6 months.
yeah,
But
you're
anyway, yeah, you're at
fresh
A and M.
into, yeah, so
Yeah.
A&M, you're fresh into college, you're meeting all these new people, you find out
Yeah.
about partying and all that, and you decide that that's the life you want, the party life. No, I'm just kidding. But
No, that, yeah.
you know, it kind of, my freshman year was just kind of like a learning experience, and I'd been in bands in high school, and then I got kicked out of most of them because I was always younger than everyone, and they're like, "We're graduating and moving to Austin." And then turns out none of them ever moved. They all still live in Harlingen to this day. So
Mm,
that's kind of funny. But anyway, College Station turned out to be this cool little like mecca for artists. So by the time I'm a sophomore, I start going to these open mics, and um, that's kind of how I got my start, was just going to open mics, playing my songs, playing covers, and then meeting other musicians. And then you start meeting these other musicians, we're writing songs together, and like then you're growing, and then we started bands. And then the poetry thing was really huge in College Station. It was Bryan College Station, technically, in downtown Bryan was where all this was going down. But Revolution Cafe, the Village, this place called the Stafford, they were just like kind of like the the scene for the kids that were not just like country guys that wanted to go to the Northgate area and listen to country. Um, I got in a lot of fights my freshman year, which is funny too, because back then you wear skinny jeans, you get called certain things, and now that doesn't happen anymore, which is awesome. But 2007 was a different time. Um, anyway, yeah, so you get to meet all these people in downtown Bryan, right? And we're writing songs together, and then we're doing poetry together, and like learning how to do haikus. And we would have poetry battles,
Little,
like slam battles, to where we would try and win, and basically who would write the best, you know and so that kind of helped to grow. And I that's one thing I haven't been able to find here in Austin, though. I moved here in 2012. After graduating, I was in College Station for a little longer, like a year, I guess. I just kind of stayed there and worked and wrote out the lease agreement on my house. And then whenever I moved here, even to this day, though, I haven't like found a solid group of people that we just all write together and stuff. I mean, I have it with my bandmates, but not like you meet up with other bands. That's kind of what we did in College Station, and I thought that was really neat.
it's funny that there was a little Greenwich Village there in College Station. I never would have thought that, and it's also cool that you were took the initiative to be a part of that. I think so. I moved. If you moved in 2012, I moved right at the beginning of 2011, and so right before you. And I literally think you. Well, I don't know if you're talking about writing with other bands or if you're talking more of like a poetry kind of that kind of scene. But what I'm
Yeah.
getting at is
Well,
I
it was
think you
both.
just
Yeah.
missed it. I think you just missed it because when the first year I was here, because I didn't know anybody, I had to start from scratch. I would go to a lot of open mics, and there were these coffee shops that were set up that I am 99% sure they had a poetry night at a few of these places. But within the first 18 months I got here, those started to close down. Like, did you know Flipnotics or Rudamaya?
Yeah, totally.
Did you ever go? Because I would have thought those places had a scene like that, but maybe those
Yeah, I
places
did
were
go to
probably gone.
Flipnotics. I did go
Uh-huh.
to Flipnotics a lot, and that was interesting because it was like an unmiked open mic. So
Right.
everyone
Yeah.
has to be quiet, and you
Yeah.
kind of really get
You
into
fight
it.
for the
So
pencils. You had to fight for the
yeah,
pencils.
there's this place
Brought
called
my own. I
Stomping
brought my
Grounds
own.
too. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Stopping grounds. I remember stopping grounds.
Um, yeah, those types of places. So I definitely did that too, and a lot of
Hmm.
Craigslist. Like where I'm like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
I have these songs, and I would get their email, and I would shoot over the songs and be like, hey, if you like this, let's jam. These are my influences, and you know, man, I just went through so many people like for years before starting this band, Billy King and the Bad Bad Bad. It was like I kind of got this job at a sales thing doing tech, selling automated marketing for small businesses. It was called Signpost. And anyway, I met Cameron, our guitarist there. We were in training together, and he was like, yeah, I love to play guitar. And I was like, I love to play guitar. You want to jam? And then the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we jammed, and it was just kind of like, oh man, we've got to like,
Got
I was
something.
basically like grabbing him. I was like, you are way
Right.
too good and you don't even realize it. Let's make a band.
I've done that a number of
Yeah, he
times in
does.
my life. I'm usually the person who grabs somebody and says, "Okay, we're in a band now.
Yeah.
What do you
And
do?
then,
What's your schedule like next week? Let's get the first practice in."
right.
Go.
Exactly.
So,
And then,
yeah.
so then we were like trying to find a drummer. And so basically we figured, let's find a drummer and then we'll get a bass player because that's easy. But we just kept going through drummers. Like they would jam with us for about 4 months or so. And then they're like, oh, it's not really something I'm interested in. But I would preface at the first practice, I'm like, hey, if you don't like this, like, no hard feelings. But then, I
Yeah.
felt like it would drag on for so long, and I'm like, you're wasting my time and your time. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I was pretty lucky along the way. I did have some people that ultimately stayed long periods of time, but since I've had the two longest tenures I had, since they've left, it's been more of a revolving door, which I don't mind. I liked having a steady lineup, and I've also liked having like different lineups that kind of. But what I've learned is you gotta always be documenting the progress. So like it grows in spite of other people coming in, you know. So it's like if you're working on new material, make sure you record every practice. So then if that person's gone, it's like, all right, this is where we're at, learn it. And this is the way we
Yeah,
do it,
yeah,
or something like,
totally.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So but it's a good, you know, it's a good way to grow and learn and be agile and you know, be able to pivot. So how long were you here before Billy King and the Bad 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 started up?
Well, yeah, so I found Cameron in 2014, and then we really didn't have a band until 2017. So
Mm.
it took a long time to like really
Mm-hmm.
just get a drummer. And then once we got a drummer, we're like, all right, well, we're just doing this, we're just going to start as a three piece. And so we started with no bass. And then I would just play through a guitar and a bass cab at the same time. And that was pretty cool, but it didn't get like the low end you needed. And then kind of found our bass player, Mike, at a show. He saw us play a show and he was like, hey, you need a bass player. I'd love to play with you guys. And, we kept trying to schedule practices, and then it didn't end up working out. Just then all of a sudden, we had this weekend of 4 shows, and the first show was kind of, I knew it was going to be a happy hour. No one was really going to be there. So I just told him like, hey, learn this EP that we have out, play it front to back, learn it front to back, and show up. And then we'll just play the EP as is, front to back. And so he showed up and it just like killed it. And so it was incredible. So it was like, all right, you're in the band now. And so now we have a bass player, and it just, kind of took off from there. It was at that time that we got the bass player. We had just gotten like the runner up for best new Austin band, and then got on to Black Fret. And so things were just kind of lining up, and it was like, all right, we just got to hit the ground running and keep moving forward. And that's the tough
So
part.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fresh then. I thought you guys were kind of in full gear closer to like 2015, but man, it's already
Yeah,
2021. So I guess
I know.
2017 is about almost 5 years ago or something. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
So we've been around for 4 years. So
and if you guys, I know you guys play around a lot. Have you guys been able to hit? I know you said you were planning on it. It was imminent with a new album and a new van. But had you guys been able to get around much? Do any touring around the region or country or anything like that?
now, so I mean, before COVID, we definitely did a lot of Texas touring, Oklahoma, like
Mm-hmm.
small. We were just kind of like building out our base, So
Mm-hmm.
I felt like we had kind of conquered Austin. So people started hearing about us, and we were like, okay, we got to go to Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and then we're just stretching that out, and then like going to Norman, Oklahoma, and then like all these other places, kind of just branching out the bubble, so to speak. And last year was our year that we were really going to hit a hardcore tour and go all across the East Coast and everything, and had to cancel that. But in the future, we do have plans to, get back on the road. I do want to go to Europe. Um, I have some connections in South America and Mexico too, so I would love to do that. So, and I know that they
That would
love
be nice.
rock and roll, so
Europe and
we
South
shall see.
America, man. I would
Yeah,
love to get to Europe. I've been fortunate to have my share around the US, but haven't been over the pond yet, and
yeah,
have not been to South America. I like on the some of my biggest, cities or locations on the Spotify
uh-huh,
are like Spanish speaking countries, for whatever
yeah,
reason that they love
yeah,
it. I mean, and they have, they're great audiences. Um,
yeah.
well, cool, dude. What, to kind of wrap things up, what are you, as best you can, what do you see in the future for yourself and for the industry, and how do those two meet kind of the next
Yeah.
6 months or more?
Man, right now I feel like it's still just focusing on online content. So we kind of made this whole transition to, all right, now we're just going to do a bunch of music videos, and we're just going to start releasing those and like getting, people to release it on their sites and stuff. So it kind of garners more attention. Um, and kind of trying to grow via social media. And then, hopefully within the next 6 months, everyone will start getting the vaccines. And then by the fall, you can start touring again. I mean, that's ideal. I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but I mean, definitely I want to get another album written this year, or it's already written. I want it to get recorded and out, released this year. And then I would love to be able to tour in the fall, but I guess we're just kind of playing it by ear. I don't know. Maybe just start planning
For
for
sure.
2022.
Yeah. I mean, what's so weird about this whole thing is how long it's been, how weirdly fast, and how time has become a completely new paradigm almost. It's like
Absolutely.
time is weirder in the last 10 months than I can ever remember it being.
Oh yeah.
It seems like it's a pretty obvious thing that that would be the case, but it's been weird how fast it's
Right.
gone, how where are we, what
Slow at the
it's
same time. It's like
yeah.
fast and slow. It's like a weird illusion of a dimension that we can't figure out, man. Like I don't know.
Chippy deed. No, I'm with you. Hey,
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you, and I am interested because I can tell as we touched on kind of the, the proclivity to indulge your weird side and all the deep roots and that you have rock and roll. What, as best you can, how would you describe your writing process? Where does that
Yeah.
start, grow, and end?
Yeah, so really for me, it depends. Like sometimes I think of a really cool hook, like a line in my head, and I'm like, that is incredible. I got to record this right now. So I'll just bust out voice memos on my phone and then sing it to myself. And then so sometimes it just comes off of like one hook. And then I'm like, all right, I'm going to
Mhm.
find a song that fits in and like a style that I want it to go. And then I'll build a song around that. But a lot of times, it's mostly just kind of like jamming it out on the guitar,
Mhm.
figuring out how I want the guitar riff to sound, and then I add words to it later. And usually while I'm writing, like a one-liner will come to me, and then I'm like, okay, this song is going to be about reptilians taking over and controlling the human race, and then this song is going to be about like, you know, a werewolf and just, kind of how it goes from there. And then other stuff is like about a lot of the things are kind of mostly about like how we're all just kind of docile and like things like the mass media and propaganda are used to kind of keep us in a form of control, and how we need to rebel and all of that. But yeah.
And then what? I know you mentioned the theatrical performers, and those guys are like titans, Elton John and Freddie Mercury and all those guys. I think everyone's,
Yeah.
whether consciously or unconsciously, that they've set the standard for, well, obvious. I can, you know what I'm talking about. But like when you get into the sound that you've kind of taken with Billy King and the Bad Bad, who are the biggest influences from that for that sound? Because that's
Yeah.
I'm hearing
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
in there, but
I mean,
I'm
because
curious from horse's mouth.
yeah, I mean, it's like an amalgamation of a lot of different sounds, like, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and then it goes back to like rockabilly, like Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, or like Dick Dale, and like these kind of like surf
Definitely heard
rockabilly
it.
guys. And
Yeah, I heard
uh,
that in there for sure.
so, I mean, those are big influences. Blue Cheer, just uh, I mean, for a long time, we were kind of like, we're just going to be loud. We're going to be, like, I think it was what, basically Lemmy's motto was everything louder than everyone else or whatever. And we just kind of wanted that for ourselves. And then we realized, all right, maybe we don't have to be so loud all the time. Uh, it kind of helps with the dynamic. But at the time, we had a drummer that it was just like he played really loud and he bashed hard, so we had to play loud. And now I think we've kind of gotten into it where we have a lot more dynamic and are able to, paint a better picture of everything. Like, yeah,
Did you see that movie Sound of Metal?
I did. I just watched it recently, and I thought that was interesting. You know, uh, the it was good. I felt like the ending though kind of left me hanging. I was just like, oh, that's it. He just has to like cope with it now, and
Yeah, it's
so
kind of hinting at finding peace in it, but um,
right. I mean, that's what it
I
was.
thought,
Like he had to let her
yeah,
go,
I
and
I uh, I thought it was pretty good movie. It's pretty heartbreaking premise for a it doesn't start good for a musician. Like I remember those first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. I was
Yeah,
like, this is the worst premise I could ever conceive of.
yeah,
But then you're
totally.
like, okay, it's if this is the, it's starting off with the worst, it's got to find some higher plane than
Right.
this, one would hope. He doesn't end up face down in a gutter, I hope. We'll
Yeah,
see.
absolutely. I mean,
But
it was definitely worth watching. I will say that. So
yeah, it was pretty good. Well, cool, Billy. I appreciate it, dude. Enjoyed talking to you. I really did, and do enjoy the latest release, man. It's fun. It's good stuff, dude. So congratulations on that release. I'm sorry it was had its legs knocked out from under it, but it sounds like you're
yeah,
ready to keep the fight going.
exactly. We'll be all right. But thank you again.
Cool, buddy. Yeah, man. Take care and thanks again, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.